Hello everyone. Welcome to one more series of this really nice webinar that we have been doing for a while now. We have gotten really good responses about Venture Voice, what it's doing. So first of all, I want to just introduce about what we are trying to do with Venture Voice and what's the goal. So the first goal is to bridge the gap between audience, which we think is business entrepreneurs, we have developers, and we have product owners out there. And actually, people who are running organizations, creating huge impact, and actually solving real world problems. So we try to merge them together and we talk about interesting topics and have fun along the way as well. So this is what we are going to do. So I just want to shout out for Venture Voice plus Vision Wise, who is powering this, and also IOMX for supporting us as well. Now, today, the topic is really interesting. It's something that's close to my heart. And there are several reasons for this. When we started as a developer, or when I started it as a developer, I was really interested into just solving problems. But then later on, I actually found out there are particular categories in which the whole industry works. So we have law, we have education, we also have finance, and then we have health. And one of the biggest industries is health, where a lot of focus has been over the past decade and even now. So today we are actually talking about health tech for a better tomorrow, and we are going to discuss about how we can leverage, or how the world is leveraging tech innovation for impact. And today we have someone special as our guest here on this webinar. He's one of the people that I got interacted with when I started my journey. So he was one of the people who I saw as, okay, I want to be like this developer because he's super sharp. He's super nice. He solves problems like in seconds. When you go to them, they have a bunch of ideas to discuss. So that's what caught my eye on what we call a mastery of detail as a developer. And now the person has grown into a role which is of a CEO. So I'm not going to take much more time to actually introduce Kazim Qazi on the webinar. So welcome, Kazim Bhai. It's really good to have you here. And I want you to take some time and introduce yourself. What do you do right now? And yeah, what does your day look like?
Awesome. Thank you, Asan. You mentioned a lot of good words, and I feel like they're more than I deserve. So thank you for that. And to be honest with you, I really love the podcast series that you're running, and it's very interactive, educating, and people who are joining in get to learn a lot. Um, Especially as you mentioned, the young entrepreneurs and developers and product owners. So thank you for having me here. My name Kazim Raza. I'm the CEO of KoderLabs. We started in 2013. We're, as you mentioned, developers to begin with. 2016, we actually formed our company in US, Dallas. And I think that was just a way for us to push our trust and credibility a bit further when it comes to being available in the same time zone physically and be able to meet and greet with our customers. And then we registered ourselves as a business in Dubai in 2019, I believe. Alhamdulillah, at this point, we are at around 200 plus employees worldwide, and we take pride in, really pushing hard when it comes to creating success stories. Whenever we undertake a project, we are not thinking about delivering a project. We are thinking about whether a project is going to create any impact, be it our own product or be it a project that a customer brings in, and we really care deeply about how it's going to impact the society or whoever the intended audience are. So just a brief about what we do, what our vision is, and where we stand at this point. So yeah, thank you for having me here.
No problem. It's really good to have you. And just from a perspective of people who know you, they're like different kind of those people. Some of them actually know you from years, so they see you in a perspective of the achievements that you have done in the past, including like creating a company that has so many employees and have had a lot of employees in the past. So we know a bunch of people out there who have graduated from KoderLabs, so to say, including myself. And a lot of people reach out sometimes and say, "Oh, you worked at KoderLabs. I know that company." So a lot of people actually in Pakistan, especially, know the company as well. And the other kind of people are those who see you as, a CEO or someone well established already. So they don't really see the past on what kind of effort has been there as an individual, but then also as a company as well. And that's what we are here for talking about as well. So discussing the past, let's talk about tomorrow. So, what does a better tomorrow in healthcare look like to you personally, and how do you see technology playing a key role in achieving that?
I'm very excited. I'm very hopeful that things are going in a good direction when it comes to adoption in healthcare. But at the same time, I hear a lot of people and talk to so many guys out there who keep pushing for regulations and confidentiality and how AI and the other techie stuff is going to be adopted in healthcare. I think AI and in general health tech or health care when it comes to adoption of technology is going to be slow, steady, and at scale. So that's what I feel when it comes to adoption of technology in healthcare. I feel like healthcare in particular has so many risks involved, and you have so little chance to take experimentation. And when it comes to adoption of technology, it is always incremental and experimental before it actually gets adopted on scale. So you have to go through a lot of regulations and uh, precautions upfront, so you don't mess up down the road when you're actually implementing things on people's lives. So in my opinion, it's gonna be slow but at scale. In my I think healthcare is not gonna be up and coming when it comes to adoption of technology. It's gonna be like 5 years down the road when we actually realize and understand how AI and technology is really changing our other industries, and then slowly adopt it in healthcare. And especially, I think that's the reason why it's going to be slow, especially is because healthcare takes in a lot of, I mean, health tech and AI takes a lot of data in, makes sure it understands and trains models on that data, and then it gives you solutions or suggestions per se. So you have to go through that phase where you constantly feed them enough data so that whatever suggestions or outcomes you're expecting from technology is actually feasible and adoptable for the patients and for the doctors.
Exactly, yes. And I agree. I think the part where AI and health tech struggles quite a lot as well. And I think that it stops a lot of innovators also from like jumping in, trying things out compared to these general AI agents which are helping like for content creation, etc. That I think that part is really easy, but when it comes to health tech, you got to be really careful. And even though I've personally seen a lot of companies trying to innovate a lot. For example, I was interviewed for a company in Stockholm last year, and they actually figured out using AI a really good way of uh, doing or presenting results of an MRI without actually doing an MRI, which was amazing.
Okay.
Like how could you do that? And but then just going live with that and actually trying it on like real humans is so much of a hurdle because all of these challenges that you have mentioned. So I completely
And
agree as when you say like 5 years down the road.
yeah, and I think it's intentionally so. It's not something we there is. It's not a limitation, but are intentionally not adopting AI and technology in healthcare. And even like if you go back 10 years, even then, if you see different health tech systems that are digitally enabled, they are going to be still they would be still legacy systems. And even now, whenever we take on a customer that's who is associated to healthcare, most of the time they're working with visual basics and basic and really legacy systems that you have to that they are that works for them obviously, but they are very reluctant in adopting better softwares and better solutions, because again they understand the risk involved in transformation. And I think if technology is to be adopted by healthcare industry, it has to be led by that industry practitioners, not by technologists. Because at the end of the day, we as technologists, we like to experiment, but they understand the risk it brings uh, along. So they are going to be they are going to be a caution. I mean, going to take caution when it comes to adopting, as well as in Europe there are a lot of regulations, especially when it comes to AI and health technology getting adopted. I think there's this act called AI Act, that any
Yes.
company who wants to you know get things en masse or in front of the public, they have to make sure it passes those regulations.
Exactly. Yeah. And yes, I think as you said, like this is intentional as well, because in the past we have seen, like if I'm asking Google, there's a pain in my knee, and it's like you have brain cancer. So so yes, and I'm like, like what is happening? And the same goes with these things, with when you give this autonomy to these, because we are now in the agentic area. So I would also want to sort of go there as well. But when you're saying there's an AI agent that would solve your problem, or it would be autonomous, nobody is actually looking at that, and then it's trying to solve your business issues, but then your health issues as well, that's where things become a bit tricky. And I want to segue into another question, that from what you've seen in the past or in recent times, have you seen any promising tech innovations in health tech, and how are they changing the patient care? Because it also depends on different regions of the world as well. Some people or some places are still being developed, so even like going from paperwork to digital transformation is actually led by AI quite efficiently. So have you seen anything recently?
Yeah, and you're right. It is different in different parts of the world. So a lot of these Middle Eastern, American, and African countries, they are going aggressive when it comes to adopting technology and AI, versus Asian and European markets, they are a bit cautious
Hmm.
when it comes to that. And in terms of innovation, I feel like there are a couple of things that are getting really better. One of them is actually telemedicine. So previously you had to have a nurse in physically present when they are taking care of you or assisting you with your concerns or issues. But now telemedicine has really revolutionized, and one of the projects that we worked on is actually allowing a patient in US in a pharmacy to interact with someone who is present offshore, and give them good advice and suggestions on what equipments they should buy. Obviously, they have to have some certain kind of criteria, like they can't advise on all the things, but there are things that they can advise, and becomes a very cost effective solution for those pharmacies. Because if you imagine, if you have to hire a nurse full time and assist those patients, first of all, you can only assist the patients who are in that particular pharmacy, and secondly, a person who is in US is far more expensive than someone who's outside. So that is something is really happening, especially with how 5G and networking and all the advancement has happened in in when it comes to communication. Secondly, you with AI and data that health and medicine medical fields are constantly producing, like heartbeats, like biopsies, like X-rays, MRIs, as you mentioned. All that data is is the fuel that drives AI and drives better decision making. So that is happening very fast.
Hmm.
And again, it's not commercially used at this point, but a lot of these organizations are using that data to better understand diseases, and are able to get better suggestions when it comes to understanding what that disease might be. And at the end of the day, for any new patient, that data is gold mine when it comes to suggesting or assisting them when they come up. So I think that's also one of the fields that is really going fast.
Hmm.
And finally, I think AI chatbots again is one of our projects that we have worked on. It allows for patients. Sorry. nurses and doctors to take in the patient, do the preliminary questionnaire, um, and use the previous patient data to formalize a report that when it gets presented to a nurse or a doctor has gives them a bird's eye view or a very
Mm.
quick view of what the patient is facing and what has their history been. So these are the things that we have experienced and we feel like is really advancing when it comes to technology. One of the other things that again we haven't experienced but have had chance to learn are the recording or the you can say patient monitoring systems. Again,
Mm.
they're highly regulated. You can't really enter in those fields unless you have quite a long credentials. But that is some place where IoT and wearable equipments are actually allowing the patients to just have a direct connection with um, AI moderated dashboard that constantly gives them insight as well as the insights to the doctors and nurses. These are the things that I've seen AI and health um, technology really create or add value in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also remember, like, previously it was mostly softwares, because with even with there's a company in Saudi Arabia called Estenar that we worked with, and we developed uh, sort of a solution for connecting customers and basically medical experts together. And while it's like software has been there for a lot of years now, and we have also seen multiple now wearables and IoT devices, as you mentioned. I remember that it's now super easy to have, like, the device that clings to your finger and then sends the pulses data to just via Bluetooth to your mobile. So that was like, okay, wow, technology is advancing, and it's like everybody can have it. But then we also had things like, I'm not sure if you have seen this Exopulse Molly suit, which is I think built in Europe. I'm not really sure if it's a Swedish startup or not. Probably is, or maybe, I think I remember it's probably a German startup, and that allows people uh, who have lost control of organs of their body, so they can't really walk because their brain signals don't really reach the right places to instruct them. But that suit basically allows electrically for them to control that, and then you can basically walk. I may just share my screen for just a second to actually show that, because I think it's super cool for what you could do. So this is the Exopulse Molisude, and just for the audience, they have not paid me anything for just talking about this, but I find this super nice because I was also interviewed for this company as well. And uh, and it's super nice that people who have disability can actually wear this, and then they are able to walk again. They're able to control, for example, their legs or hands, because in I'm not really sure what the name of the disease is, but in this particular situation, you don't have the control over the particular organ, for example your hand, and it shakes, and it becomes really painful or disturbing when especially you're sleeping or trying to rest. And this tool basically allows you to control that, and it doesn't really happen as much. So it's really really cool what technology can do today. So I'm super excited
Is
for.
this,
Yeah.
yeah. By the way, this startup that you mentioned, is it connected to your brain, and how does that,
Yes, so it doesn't connect to the brain directly, but it connects with like your whole body, and sends electrical signals that reach the brain and then move forward.
amazing,
So it's
amazing.
super impressive. Like, I saw the video, and when you said you'll be impressed obviously as well, and at how a person who was in a certain state of their body can now walk normally, and this is like super exciting. But coming to like the impact of these solutions, whether it's software, whether it's IoT or wearables, how do you think people or companies, or especially the clients that you have worked with, are measuring the impact of their solution? Because I think that's one of the biggest factors when it comes to VCs or investors, or even the teams who are actually working on it, like developers, like what are we doing with this tech? So what do you think is the most important metric for a health tech solution?
I think to put it in a single word, trustworthiness is something they're really looking for whenever they talk to technologists. They
Hmm.
want to see if the solution is actually gonna, be adopted by. their users, and if that solution is gonna give accurate results, and if that solution is going to retain their data in a confidential manner. So all of these things, they are really up and on top of their mind whenever they are discussing their problems with you. And then once you get through that bridge, then comes the part where you have to educate them on what things are, what are the possibilities, because a lot of uh, healthcare professionals, they are they have these processes for so long that it's difficult for them to adopt different and better processes. And again,
Mm.
those things are from our perspective as well. So you have to have that constant collaboration with them to understand what their problems are, suggest them better processes, because at the end of the day, technology gives you faster and more um, better value when it comes to adopting those or implementing those processes. But that is something you have to really focus on, making sure all their concerns when it comes to data privacy, accuracy, adoption, because at the end of the day, most of those patients are not tech savvy. So you have
Mm.
to make sure your designs and everything is very good and intuitive. And then at the end of the day, you have to constantly collaborate to make sure whatever you're implementing, it actually serves their processes as well as improves them.
Hmm. And that was actually my next question as well on the user experience, as you said, because for example, in certain countries where people don't really even use smartphones as much, or even if young generation does, maybe older people don't, and if you are really designing a healthcare solution for them, then you have to take into account that instead of like a smart app, you maybe have a messaging service easier for people to reach out to you. Have you had experience with working with any such clients, or have you seen any such solutions?
Yeah, and I think one of the key features that we really look for is keeping it as simple as possible,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, if you give too many options upfront to to these users, it becomes difficult for them to really pick and choose, because again, first of all, they are new to technology. They are using these old systems which they have to come out and adopt to the new ones. And then if you keep the UI where there's too many options, then it becomes very difficult for them. Secondly, the UI has to be interactive. So if they do any or perform any action, it has to give them some kind of feedback. Okay, we've heard you, or maybe have a, um, a secondary question from the first interaction that they have done, so they know they are actually talking to someone, because they're used to of talking to people, and now they're talking to systems who are actually helping those people in the back end to serve more patients. So I think these are the things that we really look for when it comes to the user experience. And our metrics, as I mentioned, is how good the adoption is.
Hmm. That makes sense. Absolutely. And what is the we already discussed about this as well. Like we have some regulatory challenges or compliance challenges, but what would you say is the number one compliance challenge that is encountered the most?
I think when it comes to health monitoring systems like
Mm-hmm.
heartbeat detection or um, sugar monitoring system, sugar level monitoring system, these are really regulated, especially in Europe. I think that's the hardest nut to crack. And if we feel like if we hit that part as an organization, a lot of these other places and other problems are going to be solved. We feel like wellness and corporate health and all that stuff is not as regulated, and we feel like that's our first go-to position when it comes to our strategic direction. But eventually, the most difficult and most regulated areas are the health monitoring system that are in place and that are actually used to monitor life critical situations.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
as
what?
you, the compliance, sorry to cut you off, so basically the regulation that are in place, I think in US, a lot of the companies are looking for HIPAA compliance, but HIPAA compliance at the end of the day is just a subset of GDPR. So if you have cracked that GDPR regulation and you are compliant when it comes to giving solution in Europe, then you're pretty much covered in HIPAA. And a lot of these companies who are outside Europe, are ready to adopt you as well.
Okay, and for those people who are actually watching this, when you're working with such companies who face these sort of legal or compliance situations, do you have connections within, for example, lawyers in the Europe and US who help them out, or do you leave it to the clients themselves?
No, most of the time we try to be one-stop shop, and we do our networking on our side. Make sure try to give them, because a lot of these companies, they do want compliance, but they don't have officers or agents who are actually making sure those compliances are in place. So we
Hmm.
have to do that networking and provide them solutions. So okay, here is your company that you can get your software HIPAA compliant or GDPR compliant.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think it's also like equally important for not just the startup or the product owner to understand all of these, but also to the level of who's developing it as well. And I try to go back to the developer side quite often, because I am one. So one of the things that I remember from one of my past companies, I'm not gonna take the name of the company or the person who did that, but we had situations like, um, there were console logs of username and password left on production, and then we were like screaming and also laughing as well. And then the guy had to order like 12 pizzas as well. But have you faced any situation in and you feel free to not take any names, but in terms of healthcare or compliance issues, do you have any fun story that you can remember?
Well, not in healthcare, I would say,
Hmm.
because whenever we have actually undertaken any healthcare project, we've tried to ensure that there is some encapsulation when it comes to um, data exposure and all. Because at the end of the day, if a developer is working on certain kind of data, you can't give them live data, and
Hmm.
you have to have that encapsulation as well as strict cybersecurity protocols. Make sure whatever gets deployed through some kind of proxy channel, not directly on the
Hmm.
server, and that proxy channel or the pipeliner is really restricted to a few people who are responsible for the deployment. So we do
Hmm.
take care of these things. But yes, we have seen a lot of these funny stories. Again, I won't go into the names, but as you mentioned, things keep popping up in the logs, and you're like, what's going on? Why are you logging things here? And we understand that's not ill intent. There aren't any ill intentions. It's just that they feel it's the easiest way to debug things,
Hmm.
but easiest is not the best approach, especially when it comes to debugging, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point of like keeping in mind as well, because as often as there's an idea that comes to someone's mind, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna just build this health tech product, and that's not as easy as just putting something out there. And I often am talking about this to a lot of developers these days, and you might have seen this on my LinkedIn as well, about AI and non-coders trying to use AI to build stuff. And I think as difficult it is to ship anything um, that is like fine and deployable and working and scalable, I think it's even 5x more difficult to ship something that's related to health tech. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we are having this discussion is to understand that there is not just coding or development that goes into all of this. There's so much more. There are these compliances, there's this sort of factor of data privacy, security, and just having this understanding among the entire team of you're actually working with something that can change or affect someone's life, because it's health tech data. Even if the data gets released or leaked, that's also a problem for someone, or could be a problem for someone. So that's, and especially when it comes to health tech, so it can be misused by people out there. So this is sort of the
Yeah,
moral and ethical side of it. Do you want to add
yeah,
something to that?
yeah, absolutely. I think we should be open to feedback. A lot of times what happens is, we tend to avoid making mistakes. It's totally fine. Secondly, if you are okay with making mistakes, you should be welcoming um, scrutiny as well.
Hmm.
And especially you have to think about it, as you mentioned, it's a life or death situation versus maybe Someone might say, why have you done coding that way or this way? It's totally fine. You should welcome feedback. In fact, you should invite your customers to hire a cybersecurity agency to make sure whatever you ship or deliver is actually checked by a third party as well, because it saves yourself as well as the customer before it actually goes live and published to the to the actual users. We shouldn't shy away, and I think in terms of implementation, especially in healthcare, we have it's an opportunity for us to connect with that industry practitioners, understand their problems, understand their concerns. So whatever you build, it's built ground up with keeping those concerns in mind.
Hmm, absolutely. There's also a question from the chat. Farman is asking, what are the risks involved with using AI in healthcare tech? So we've discussed a few points in general, but do you think there specifically something that we should be aware when it comes to AI in specific?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we discussed briefly, but is a very big challenge, and that's why a lot of these companies are not really aggressive in adopting AI, and that is data leaks. So, whenever you are using patient data, you have to make sure whatever you implement has proper protocols and guardrails, if you may, to ensure whatever data is getting fed into those AI models stays there, is not exposed to any other person or any other user. So that is number one concern I feel like when it comes to AI adoption. And then there are a lot of issues or concerns, like for example, the data security issues, like as I mentioned, cybersecurity and things that can be left in the code, and the loopholes that can be left in the code, and you have to make sure those are sorted. Um, Apart from that, I think data accuracy is something, as us, we don't have enough data and we can't really test it on our system. So that has to be done by, and to a very good extent, when it is in beta, when the product is in beta. So it is tested on a lot of the scenarios that might happen down the road.
Hmm, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest questions usually with AI also becomes like who is responsible is the main thing here. For example, there was, if you remember, there was a recent accident in the US by a Tesla, which tried to save a
Yeah.
person and then hit the car. Now,
Mhm.
there are a lot of discussions on if the decision was right, like what's more important, a person's life or the car. Of course, the person's life, but then who pays for the damages to the other. So there is so many things when it comes to like owning the stuff. And one of the things that I've been saying for the past few weeks on LinkedIn as well is that there has to be the human element here. And as you said pretty accurately in earlier in this webinar, is that these startups or these innovative solutions would have to be led by experts and not people who are like great software architects, because that's not their area of expertise. So
And
absolutely. Yeah.
uh, and I would add that AI can be your good assistant, not someone who's going to make the decision, especially when it comes to healthcare. So if you imagine a world where AI is going to give you, you go to AI and they're going to give you, okay, use this and that medicine. I don't think it's happening anytime soon, and shouldn't be happening. Rather, you would go to a clinic, you would give your symptoms, they will make a report and send it to a doctor who's gonna be a human and gonna take care of your concerns and give you suggest you medicines or drugs. That's the more uh, practical approach, and what I feel is going to happen.
Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, I think one of the things that you also mentioned is that people or businesses should be open to scrutiny as well, or feedback as well. And um, how do you think that startups should be open to like sharing the information that or research that they're working on, of course, in terms of partnering and collaborating with others in health tech solutions? And do you have an example that actually led to a breakthrough, or um, a company that actually did really well by sharing what they had?
Well, I mean, recently, for us, 2024 is has been a year where we have worked on a lot of projects, but in 2025 and so forth, we are focusing really on some certain specialization. Healthcare is one of them. And how
Mhm.
we are approaching it is we are reaching out to market leaders and experts when it comes to health tech, and communicating, discussing with them what their problems are, what are the things that the that the market needs or the people need, right? So we know the problem first, and instead of suggesting a solution to a problem, we want to understand the problem first and then draft a fine-tuned solution. So I think for any startup, if you want to get into health tech, you need to connect with practitioners and healthcare doctors and nurses and understand, and hospitals, and understand their problems before getting before putting your one first line of code even,
Mm.
because then you'll know their concerns, and then you're going to bring, whatever technology that you use, whatever whatever ground rules that you're going to put in when it comes to writing the code, you're going to make sure those are placed at the in the roots of those solutions.
Absolutely. I think it's more like, don't be that kid of the class who says, I've not studied anything, and then he is the topper, because then you're not really sharing any insights. And I really like the example of Microsoft, for example, because I've been a Microsoft hater for like decades. And one of the things that they did really well was, creating VS Code, making it open source, and then also investing a lot in open source as well. So it's even though it's a non health tech example, it's an example where they actually shined really well with VS Code, TypeScript, all those examples where a lot of external contributors contributed quite a lot. And I think that's where I want to sort of follow up with a question of how do you think the startups or innovators in the industry should balance this sort of a struggle between how much information to share with others so they can also work with, because also there's also always a concern that someone would take this information and work on their own thing as soon as possible. So do you think it's and I think it's like a ethical dilemma on what a company feels like right, or what a person feels right. But in your personal opinion, if there is an innovation happening, how would you say is sharing that information with the world to get external feedback is important?
I think OpenAI is one of the biggest example, and as you mentioned, like Microsoft, they are open, they're not closed, and that's why they have the biggest system out there that is helping you achieve so many heights. I think this question, the answer would might be opinionated, and some might say you should stay closed and make sure your code is not exposed. Versus some would say, okay, that your code can be open and anyone can use it, like 10 years ago. But now I think most of the people do agree that the world is a small, really like a global village, and you can't do it alone. There's so many things happening in so many places, and then you have to really rely on the data that comes along, not just the algorithms. So you have to really connect with each other and contribute towards a unified goal. And I feel like, if your concern is with privacy, especially when it comes to IPs, sure, it is important, but you really need to look at the bigger picture and collaborate or communicate with each other to understand what is the best what's the most feasible solution to a problem. And in my opinion, right at this point in time, uh, I think that's the more uh, practical approach.
Yeah, and I really like the example of OpenAI as you mentioned. And I think even all the other companies, big companies, are doing exactly the same to allow others to contribute to, you know, do it openly. So Google has their own Google has their own models which are open source, like Gemma, Code Gemma, etc. And then we also have OpenAI's open model LFL. And I was looking into this new thing called DeepSeek, which is built by some Chinese company, and it's like booming quite a lot, and it's very cheap compared to OpenAI, etc. And I was like, okay, they might have everything like closed source, nobody could be seeing things, but I also saw that they have their own public models, open source models for vision. And that is a great example of, even if you're taking a leap in non health related tech, regardless of the industry or area, I think the innovation would really come when a lot of minds would collaborate and partner together, as you said. And for the things that are more important, like shipping things or developing things, I think entrepreneurs or businesses should leave them to the experts who are already doing that and focus on the research side of it and the technical side of it. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, I can't agree more. I think we sometimes, get going with our, I shouldn't say but that word, but ego, where we feel like we know everything. But I think we should understand that technology is there to specialize different industries, not doesn't come first. The
Hmm.
problems on those industries come first. Technology is there to assist in solving them better. So we as technologists should work as an assistant to those market leaders and help them get better at what they're doing.
Hmm. Absolutely. We've gotten a really good question from YouTube. So Siraj says how important it is to understand consultants and doctors' perspective by building the solutions for them. So let's say a health tech startup, and um, considering them, as you said, as the core component of the solution, and how are you reducing the gap? So when you work with different clients, I'm assuming that being a software consultancy company, you may have directly the product owners of such startups, or you might have like a middle company as well. So how do you reduce the gap with doctors, which may not be the product owners in certain cases?
Well, we really try to invite our customers to, help us connect with those people who are actually going to use these systems, as you mentioned, doctors, nurses, and
Hmm.
I feel like they do understand the the value when it comes to designing a system that a user is going to use. Their feedback is very important, especially when healthcare, as I mentioned, it's very difficult to get them to adopt those changes or those technologies. Then it becomes critical for those users to actually give feedback from the onset. And secondly, as a technologist, I feel like you have to spend probably 50% of the time understanding the requirements, making sure whatever you are designing is actually reviewed by those users before you actually start writing the code. And
Hmm.
I think that has been one of our biggest achievement as a company, that whenever we do something, we want to make sure whatever we design, whatever we develop, it actually get designs to the pixel and gets reviewed by our customers before we actually start writing anything. I think you've also heard that saying where a problem understood is half solved.
Exactly.
So that's very very relevant when it comes to technology. I feel like a lot of these apps actually have to be rewritten again and again just because the problem wasn't understood to begin with.
Exactly. And I think the best way for it to is to just discuss with the people who are going to use it at the end. And a lot of product owners now, thankfully, understand all of that. It has not been the case in the past, but I think people now understand the value of spending time in brainstorming, rather than just shipping something based on their assumptions. So yeah. And
and compa- and
yep.
competitor research. So a lot of these times, as I mentioned, sometimes they don't even know what other processes exist that they can adopt to get better as well. So when you start doing competitor research again in the early stages of a product development, it actually helps them and shows them the value that they are bringing, that you as the technologists are bringing on the table. It's not just technology; you're actually bringing the um, care, if you may, to the product.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was also looking into publishing my next book, so I was also looking into like competitor analysis and how important that is. So it's a very interesting topic and close to my heart, at least in these days. But have you had a chance to actually let a client know that you have come without any competitor analysis? You probably don't know what you're doing, and let us help you. And then, do you have a special team players in your team that actually help with that?
We are into success stories. We are not into delivering projects. So any customer comes in, we think about the product design,
Hmm.
to how the user is gonna adopt and how they are gonna market the product. So in house we have our marketing team, we have our business analyst team, we have our competitor research team, we have our project manager, we have our developer, we have QA, we have our customer support, everything in house. And we want to give them a one stop shop so that they don't have to go here and there and then find so many people, and then they're going to have so much difficulty making sure those companies interact in a good way between them, among themselves. We want to make sure we take all that burden on our side and we give them a solution that they can be successful with. Like a successful project product is not just delivery, it's marketing as well. It's the leadership that comes with the marketing after the product is deployed. It comes into beta testers, it goes into receiving this feedback from the users and have that version 1.1 where those feedback has been taken care of. All that things we really care deeply about these things and make sure we want to make sure they become successful.
Interesting. That also brings a question that I had in my mind that if you had to, let's say, because you're obviously being watched by a lot of entrepreneurs as well. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs who may think that they could go to any AI tool like V0, Cursor, blah blah blah, and then create a solution in which they might spend some time as well, or hire just a developer, no QA, no nothing, no end-to-end testing, etc. And they're shipping something. And then there are people who may spend actually some money to hire the experts, and then worry about the other things like marketing, sales, etc. So would you think this question has two parts. Do you think that they are going to be successful? And let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think, how successful they're going to be? And secondly, what would you say their expectations should be in case that they try to build everything themselves, or they try to reach out to experts when it comes to competitor analysis, when it comes to like compliance, when it comes to just building and shipping a technical solution?
I think it's just trade-off. So if you don't want to do everything yourself, you can. But what happens is you are risking the trust. If you deliver a substandard product, that customer is not gonna continue to give you their time. A lot of the customers who want to adopt technology and they are far-sighted, they understand the long-term vision, they value time over money. So if you really want to be successful, I mean, you can be successful by luck, and I think we also understood this problem after a long time that if we just do the coding and don't really worry about everything else, then you can by chance deliver a good product, but most of the time it's not going to be good, and the customer wouldn't trust you anymore.
Hmm.
So, in my opinion, especially in software industry, if you deliver a product, you're not going to make money. You make money by retaining the trust, and that trust actually continuously drives your ROI down the road. It's not the first project that you do, it's the relationship that comes after the project. So you want to really, in my opinion, you shouldn't worry about the profit in the first project. You should really worry about if you are able to retain the trust, and with that trust you actually make profit. It's a two-step process, not one-step process.
Interesting. And what would you advise to these entrepreneurs or fresh entrepreneurs that are trying to, innovate and build technical solutions, especially if they want to create impact? What should they strive for? How should they try to find, let's say, the gap where they can actually contribute? Do you have any suggestions for them?
There's so many gaps. You don't even have to worry about the gaps as long as you just continuously learn. Be
Hmm.
out there, network on LinkedIn. You'll find so many people who will have so many problems to solve. That's not a problem. The problem is either whether you are a creative thinker, and I think creative thinking comes from reading a lot of books and a lot of articles and looking at a lot of thought-provoking podcasts and different material out there. First of all, try to figure out what your direction is. Learn, be creative, and just network. And you don't have to worry about problems. You will actually find so many problems to solve. And with all these things, you're actually develop your soft skills as well. So I think that comes really handy when you are communicating with anyone out there. It's understanding their context, their perspective, their context, and be able to contribute in that context. So I think this, if you ask me what's the basic thing you should do, just learn and network.
Hmm. And that brings my second question. That is, you have changed quite a lot of roles as well. So similarly, there might be someone who is, let's say, a technical entrepreneur going into health tech, or someone who is maybe a developer and they want to become an entrepreneur. How important would you say it is to delegate what you are doing right now to someone else, so you can focus on what's more important? And has it helped you in the past?
It has. Um, and the way I have done and been successful in doing it is do it yourself first, figure out the recipe, and then communicate that recipe to someone else. That's the sure shot approach. Second one is, you let them handle it themselves. Again, they are going to make mistakes. And if they are smart, they're going to give you solutions, but it's a longer process, in my opinion. If you want to go far, go slow, figure out the recipes before delegating, delegate, then move on.
Hmm, absolutely. All right, we're moving actually to our final thought. So when it comes to, defining success for health techs, what do you think is more important? Is it patient outcomes, or your relationship or your trust from the patients? Is it getting recognized in the health tech industry, or is it something else?
I think when it comes to health tech, you have to really think about the end user, that is patient. Um, Recognition should really not be a variable when in any picture when it comes to health tech, because it's such a sensitive thing. You can't really think about your fame or your recognition. You have to think about the patient outcomes, as you mentioned. Try to make sure your solutions are adoptable, easily usable, and that actually adds value to the lives of people who you're serving.
Hmm. Okay. And what do you think when it comes to KoderLabs and the way you're working with all these clients as well? What kind of legacy do you think, or do you hope KoderLabs leaves in the health tech space?
KoderLabs has a labs in it, and the way we want to explore healthcare is by collaboration with the market leaders. I've been mentioning it in throughout our webinar. We want the subject matter experts to lead the way. We want to assist them in drafting the solution and how, um, assist them with, you know help them make better products, be their hands when it comes to drafting a solution for their users. So that's where we are focusing. We are really head on into networking with people, understanding what the problems are, of the industry are, to the detail, and then develop something that's actually serving the population.
Absolutely. And I've listened to you like about for an hour, and I've heard this term networking quite a lot from you as well. This is something that I push for a lot as well when it comes to being a developer, personal branding, and now obviously for even for products, even for connecting with a lot of people, because that brings you the opportunities and also a different perspective as well. Has that been a major factor in your success? And do you think that you have enabled any of your clients with such experiences by just connecting them with the right people?
Yeah, I think our approach to not just delivering but marketing and making sure their product gets successful has actually helped us retain long term relationships. So for right now, more than half of our revenue, in fact, pretty much 70 to 80% of our revenue comes from those relationships, not from the new project that we onboard. So it really
Hmm.
drives the engine. And anything new that comes in, we can be strategic about it. We don't have to be generalist anymore. We can be strategic. Like if we want to do healthcare, then we are going to be picky in selecting those customers who are actually aligned with our long-term vision at this point. So it has enabled in us in so many ways,
Hmm.
because again, we focused on success and not just delivery.
And I think that's then the same for the health tech sort of startups as well, or solutions as well, that you need to find and sort of bridge this gap and make a really strong connection with your early customers. They could be your friends and family, whoever it
Yeah.
is, because I think that's what will use this as, word of mouth, sort of marketing as well, and then also the trust that would recommend.
And we are not limiting ourselves to any region. So even in Pakistan, we are looking for people who see problems, and we want to create an impact. So we are not really thinking about the profits that might come along. Sure, I mean, that's a good thing to have always, but we are thinking about whether we can serve this community too. And we want to really understand the problem. That's our first and foremost target, to understand the problem, connect with people who actually are facing those problems. And we have made some long-term connections where we are really focusing on understanding their problems right now, especially in Middle East and in Pakistan. So that's where we are headed. And then once we actually understand, have a good grip of what the problems are, and then we're going to actually move towards, you
Hmm,
know, formulating solutions.
that's really nice strategy. And just before we close off, what what is the one advice that you would give to, let's say, developers who are actually aspiring and going into your career, because obviously you have a lot of experience as a developer as well, and also entrepreneurs as well. What would you give as an advice for 2025? Let's say one advice of, okay, this is what you should do as a developer, and then this is what you should do as an entrepreneur.
As a developer, I think like a lot of the times we tend to get into the details that we don't have the bird's eye view anymore. As a developer, you have to every time and again go like a mile up in the air and look at the whole situation, the map of what you're trying to solve, and then get back to coding, because that really keeps you on track when it comes to understanding the problem, not just drafting the solution.
Mm,
I think same is the case with entrepreneur, but with entrepreneur, you have to really understand the customer, ask them as many questions as possible. Me as an entrepreneur, one thing that has really helped me is I'm always trying to think what the other person is thinking, and read between the lines, because sometimes they don't even know their problem. They're just trying to give you symptoms. You have to understand what their problem is before actually giving any solution. So that has helped me a lot with any of our customers who has gone long term, to really listen to them and understand what their really real problem is, so I can give better suggestions.
would you say empathy is a major factor here as well? Because sometimes, as you said, when we are approaching businesses, we are like, okay, let the money come in, and instead of really listening to the customers. And sometimes we often think, okay, this person is thinking this. So do you think having empathy also strives for a greater connection as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what empathy does is tend to care deeply about the people you work with, so that they start working towards your goals. So it becomes a team approach versus you just doing it yourself. So it
Absolutely.
has a lot of utility too.
Absolutely. And just as we are running out of time, I really want to thank you. I've been looking forward to this webinar for a long time now. We have been in communication as well. So thank you so much for your time and your availability as well. I hope this was useful for our audiences as well. And I would highly encourage everybody who's watching this to follow Kazim Bhai, look what he's doing, follow what he's sharing as well. There are a lot of good insights on his LinkedIn page as well. And I think there are a lot more success stories to come as well when it comes to you, and also when it comes to KoderLabs as well. So we are really looking forward to what you do in 2025 and beyond. So with that, I really want to thank you. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Thank you. Appreciate all the good words, but I feel like it's not going to be justice if I don't mention my team.
Mm,
Most of the work that we do is actually getting done by the team that works with us as a team members. So I want to thank them, and then I want to thank you for keeping persisting me or inviting me to the event. I'm sorry that it has taken so long, and your
no problem.
journey has been really inspiring. The way you have conducted this podcast, as well as I keep admiring the way you deliver value to your audience, is really admiring and really worth learning from. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much for the nice words. With that said, I'm gonna let you go. And I'm also hearing my kid as well, so we're gonna go for dinner. So thank you everyone who joined today. Kazim Bhai, thank you as well, and we'll keep in touch.
Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
You too. Bye. All right, everyone. So that was it for today's webinar. I hope you learned a lot from this one. Again, I would highly encourage you to follow Kazim Qazi's page as well on LinkedIn. You can see it right here as well, and follow their page on LinkedIn named KoderLabs as well to see what they're doing. And there are a lot of opportunities there as well. There are a lot of opportunities for developers and QAs that they're pushing out every time as well. With that said, I also want to quickly announce that. I also started this structured mentorship program as well, which is booking a 101 with me. So a lot of people actually have reached out today. I just shared it today as well. So if you have something that needs to be built, like a technical solution, or even if it's a startup, something related to AI, you can obviously reach out and I can connect you with the right people. It could be KoderLabs, it could be IOMX, it could be someone else as well, but we can have a discovery call or bounce ideas. And if you want some help with your career or interview preparation, etc., you can also reach out to me as well, or just having a nice little chat. Some of the services here is actually free, so you can actually try that out, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. With that said, we are going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I'll see you in the next webinar. And if there's a person that you think should be on this particular webinar or our podcast, let me know in the comments as well, or just DM me. With that said, thank you as always.